of foreign policy with South America, what would you do? And if I take 3 minutes to tell me. So, anybody else? What do you think?
I'm going to take a different tact on this. After reading this and before reading this, I'm not overly disturbed as an American citizen of where things are in South America or Latin America, because unlike during say the 1980s, 1990s, when we had the Nicaragua and the Soviet Union competition, the competition with China is basically economic. In fact, that's how China sells themselves, that we don't want to interfere, we just want to do business. But once they do business, they do have leverage through the loans and everything. They kind of got the countries hooked. So really, maybe very simplistically, I'm saying that maybe China is getting better business opportunities than we are.
Okay.
Well, they're getting them because they're putting up the money to exploit natural resources mostly.
Right.
They're building infrastructure.
Okay, and infrastructure, sure.
Right.
But they are doing it, and they are paying for it. And the United States wasn't doing it and wasn't paying for it. So here's third world companies that said, well, we need help, and here's somebody, willing to give it to us.
Okay. So it goes back to their long-term strategy, kind of control through the back door, is what you're saying. Is that what you think? It
actually goes back to the lack of a long-term strategy.
Well, for us, but I'm talking about for China, it's a long-term. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Julie, what do you think? No, you're already on mute, off of mute.
No, she's not.
Now you are. Yeah. No. Sorry. Julie, you need to unmute. Unmute.
Okay. Before, China was really concentrating on building those highways through Asia and into Africa and to connect them to Europe. And I think when Trump came in and started focusing all of our attention on only think of America first and only think of the United States first, he saw an opportunity to expand their goals, which had focused on adjacent countries toward that path toward Europe. And all of a sudden, in the last 4 years, they've beefed up their they've reached out pleasantly to help all the South American countries as well to just nurture those bonds of partnership, which we were severing. So I think that China looked at their long-term goals and saw an opportunity and played the card. And we weren't playing that card at all during the last 4 years.
We were blind to it.
Yeah, and I think that reducing the State Department and the number of people who are trained to work with those other people in those countries to make partnerships, they were underpaid, understaffed. We just didn't do it for the last 4 years. That department went away.
All right.
Yeah,
Ken and Kathy, I haven't
they
heard
were
from you guys.
Ignored. They were ignored, the diplomatic corps.
That's true. As other countries were too. You're right.
Go back.
Yeah. Ken, Kathy, comments.
You let him do the commenting.
That's a challenge. I'm just catching up with the meeting here and being on here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take a pass.
All right. Tony? Unmute, Tony. Tony, unmute.
Repeat the question so Nancy knows what we're talking about. Maybe she has some information.
I didn't have a question on that one. It was more of a follow-up. Nancy, you can unmute. you can respond to us. Have you been unmute, Nancy?
Yep.
You can hit the Alt key A at the same time and it unmutes.
Okay, but she has her iPad. It's different.
Yeah.
Okay, unmute.
Maybe you got it.
iPads are different. I forgot how.
Alt TA.
Okay, do you have a cars 3x5?
Okay, Tony, you can unmute her.
Oh, I could? Hold on.
Go to participants. Go to participants.
All right.
And go down to her.
I will. Okay.
And then, okay, and just
ask to unmute.
Yeah, you should just be able to unmute.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there you go. All right. So tell us, Nancy, what do you think?
What was the question?
It wasn't a question.
It was really more of what's your comment about what we've been talking about so far?
China
I haven't heard
America.
any of it.
China
Okay.
and South America. What do you think the impact of China's efforts in the last 4 years in South America, and how will that impact the United States?
Oh, well, just from an uneducated view, I think it's bad. You know, we don't want China to have influence in this hemisphere.
Is that, you think the Monroe Doctrine still has some kind of an effect?
Sure.
Well, that's what you're saying. You think the Monroe Doctrine, which basically said we tell the other countries, stay out of Latin America. This is our hemisphere idea.
But that's,
what do you think? Is that dead or not? Jason?
I think some people would like for it to still be alive, but real politics indicates that we'll never have that power in the hemisphere ever again.
No.
Okay. And should we have that power?
No. Not really.
Well,
make a suggestion on that if I can.
Larry, you're kind of muffled. Can you get closer to your microphone?
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how we feel about the Monroe Doctrine. If we compare and contrast the inevitability that creates a stronger China hegemony as they do the equivalent in their area, including South Korea, Japan, the Spratly Islands, etc. So be prepared for that if that's your leverage point. And I don't know that China has worldwide military ambitions like the United States is stuck with. I think we like having our power worldwide, and I don't know if China really wants that. People talk about their aircraft carriers, meaning Blue Water Navy, but I don't anticipate them getting out of their own neighborhood. A book that says more, that doesn't agree with what I just said, is the 100-Year March by Michael Pillsbury, which is more conservative. And he would say that they've had this plan since 1949 that they're working towards. But I don't see it getting beyond that. And I think an interesting thing might be to compare South America with Africa. And I think the Belt and Road, there are transportation grids in both places, but they're all resource extraction.
Exactly.
They basically run from the interior to the coast. There's not much intertrade, so to speak, across Africa or across South America. So we need to. Peru was in the Trans-Pacific Partnership that we boned, screwed over when we left. And I think basically working South America and Africa into some other multinational trade will put us in a competitive place that China has left open as it relates to trade. And so I think looking at Africa is illuminating as a comparison. I don't think China really wants to be an international military power. They may have to be. There's nothing for them to have to do. It's so much cheaper for them to let the United States do a lot of things, and then they can just concentrate on other things that are better.
Wait a minute, Jason. Go ahead, Larry. Continue.
So I think I'm pretty much done with all that. But I think one more comment: patriarchal approach. If you look at the entire experience of South America, it's patriarchal government. in that whenever the elected or other forms of government get out of line, it's the military assumes it's their job to roll in and take over, to clean it up, and then turn it back over to civilian control. That's been the case more than U.S. patriarchal rule. It's actually been internal. So to the extent that we don't do what we did against versus the communists, Russians, is to back up every dictator in every country in South America, I think we might be able to show a light that China is not prepared to get involved with. I don't know that, but they would normally accept any form of government right now like we used to. And I think there's a weakness there. They can't show an example of democracy like we can. To actually get that example to be worth showing.
Okay, Larry Mortzoff.
Yes, 2 points. I think Latin America and Africa are better off with the Chinese model than with the American model, because we always had a little bit of imperialism in there, and we tended to get mixed into too many military conflicts. And also from the Latin America standpoint, they did not they resented American criticism of human rights. So from their perspective, I'm not saying that's the best from the world perspective, because I think it's not. A point on the Monroe, if we were to contend with China that, hey, this is our area of influence because of the Monroe Doctrine, well, I think China would be tempted to come out with their Monroe Doctrine. Well, we're announcing our South China Sea, which extends out into the Philippines and maybe up as far as Japan, and certainly includes Taiwan because it's part of China, and we would not be pleased with that.
Okay, so it's their counteractions would.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, do you think the Monroe Doctrine is really outdated and rather, what's the word I want to use? Paternalistic, I guess, would be as they refer to it as. So what do you think about the Monroe Doctrine as far as being applied now? Is it really, and as Jason mentioned too, is it really alive? Is it really working? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Monroe Doctrine is antiquated. Mm-hmm. It was put into force when the navies were sailing navies, I think, in the early part of the Republic. I think we'd be crazy to try and enforce it. I mean, it's a huge area, demographically diverse, and they don't all like us. And for sure, if you try to enforce it, they'll all fear us and eventually hate us.
Yeah.
I want to respond to something that Larry Orcutt said about the military. If I heard it right, that the military is the leaven in the systems of South America, and when they go radical, it's the military that pulls them back to some equilibrium. Did I hear it? Did I hear it right?
What I was saying is that patriarchy aspect has been over.
Yes.
Going back to the 19th century.
Yes.
Basically, democracy is following the American model from way back when. Back in the days when every new country in the world wanted to use the U.S. Constitution as a model, unlike today. Basically, democracy was the way of life. It was really it was the case where too much socialism, for example, in the minds of many, would cause a lot of issues in all these countries. And the military frequently, in almost every country, would step in, clean up the mess, and put it back.
Okay. Could I interrupt at this moment and say something about Chile, Peru, Argentina, and Brazil, not to speak of Venezuela? Pretty much every country in South America that's had left-wing tendencies have had much stronger right-wing militaristic tendencies with a lot of death. A lot of people died. And I don't know, do you still think that's the way it is, Larry Orcutt? That the military is smoothing? Well, actually, they are in Brazil, aren't they? Is that right?
I don't know what the future portends. I'm just saying there's more than a century of momentum along those lines, and things will change.
Yeah.
It could get worse, it could get better. But you're right. That's what you're talking about is examples of what I was talking about. And then the idea of giving control back, it's sort of like Burma or Myanmar. Well, maybe. So it goes back and forth. I'm just saying that's part of the battle model.
I thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, let me, in the video, which you didn't get a chance to see, there's a short part in there where when Kerry was the Secretary of State, he had mentioned the Monroe Doctrine is dead in effect.
Yeah.
Now, but in Bolton, when Bolton was in the Trump administration, he made a point of saying, we brought the Monroe Doctrine back and it's very much alive. So based on that, you got two different views from two different political philosophies in effect. So based on that, what do you think Biden's administration is going to do, and how do you think they're going to handle our relations with South America? Do you think it's going to be business as usual as we've always worked with them, or is it the dynamics have changed because of China? So what do you think that the Biden administration approach might be? Anybody?
Well, okay. Sorry. I think they have to come with a fresh start of some kind.
Okay.
And they have to be polite. And they have to really be polite. I mean, they have to be diplomatic, because there are other horses in the race now.
Okay.
And we have to prove that we have a good long-term intentions. But we also have to admit that we're not going to get back the superiority that we had previously.
Okay, so we have to kind of approach it with hat in hand, right? Tony, comment.
Yeah. But
Tony.
Yeah.
I see Biden proposing $10 or so billion to correct the countries that have all the refugees coming out, so that there will be a reason for them to stay home. In other words, attack the sources that are creating the problems, in essence, so that that could help the image of the United States by being more proactive in correcting a bad situation in these countries. And I believe that China's going to step on its own foot, because some of the countries that they're giving all these loans to, are like Peru, are having problems with China, and China's having problems with them and them paying their debt. And China is if we notice, the Fuyao, who saw the movie Fuyao? The factory.
The glass factory.
You can see how Chinese want to take over everything, regardless of the nature of the country they're in. They don't respect the way of life, and they try to impose it on the Americans. You saw what happened there. So I think China's going to burn itself in the foot in a few years. There's going to be corruption, stealing a lot of the money that China's putting in those countries. And this is going to help Americans get their foot back in the door with, let's say, some sort of a redevelopment program for those countries that we can provide.
Okay. What about, you know, the idea of, somebody mentioned before, you know, China's really, I think Larry mentioned and Jason, China's really not they're not putting forth their military as we do, the strength around the world, which we've done since World War II. But they're approaching it more, the strategy, Larry Mortzoff, you mentioned this, the strategy is more economic.
Yeah.
And what would happen if we want to get back in and we take a totally different approach, as opposed to saying we're trying to get back in and get back into good graces of South American countries? What would happen if we say, let's partner with China on the economic aspects of things?
Wow.
What do you think? Anyway, Julie, what do you think?
Have we ever?
I don't know. I listened to the cultural thing about China. I just want to remind you that China has gotten a lot of applause for their culture, which is very controlling, but they've only had 4,000 COVID deaths or 5,000 COVID deaths, and we've had 500,000 because we don't have that same culture that manages, that tests for the disease and then manages the population so that they can control the virus before it gets out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And playing that way of doing business, that cultural impact right now, kind of doesn't make democracies look as smart as having that other type of leadership. And what I wanted to, I was looking up the Monroe Doctrine, and it says that we aren't going to, it mostly talks about Europe and colonization, but it says we're going to defend North and South America, which we have not. We don't even Trump, for the human rights stuff, we separate parents and families. I mean, it's just we aren't as,
we're not walking to talk or talking to walk, or whatever that expression
we
goes.
haven't been doing that recently, but I do.
Okay.
But I do. It's just a different. They have a different culture than we do, and it's hard to.
Well, would it be based on that? I understand that, but the idea of trying to get along with other countries. I mean, you know, China's going to be. It's a pretty gigantic force, just for the population alone. So what I'm saying is, and that would improve relations directly with China, certainly too, but that might be an inroad to improve those relations with China in trade and so on. So they maybe would not be so quite as aggressive. And certainly the two cultures are definitely different, as you mentioned. Yeah. And you were assuming there's only 4,000 deaths with COVID deaths in China too. I wouldn't trust a lot of those figures, but what do you think? Anybody else? Ken? Kathy, what do you think? Any thoughts yet?
Well, China, wherever China goes, China tells its own people what to think and what to do.
Which is the opposite of us.
Yes. And for the most part, the people follow it. And, or at least that's what we're told anyway. So, that's an effective way to handle anything when you think about it. I wish I could tell the Zoom screen exactly what to do, what I was thinking. And it was
so does Tony. Okay. But that's a good point. Yes.
What is the question at this moment, Jim?
Well, the idea is more of a partnership, more of a friendly, more of an openness towards China. They're already there in South America, Latin America, and Caribbean too. You know, you can't refute the idea they're there, and they're not going to just pick up and leave. And the question is, our approach to Latin America, is it going to be adversarial with China to get back in there and get in the good graces of Latin American countries? And most of them haven't looked very favorably on us for many, many years anyhow, and for good reasons, I think, in many cases. So all I'm saying is, yes, there's different, the cultures are different totally. But is that a way, a long-term, again, we should look at long-term strategies. And China has always had long-term strategies. It's kind of it's a cultural thing.
Yeah. In the 1400s, China put together the largest fleet in the world and sailed to the edges of Europe and around Africa, and I think they even touched in South America and got to Australasia.
Right.
This was
they've been around.
They really been around. They were way ahead of these little Pitsanuzzi boats that the Spaniards set off and the English. And what happened to them was, or what was happening is that they wanted to increase their influence in the wider world and create bigger markets for Chinese products. And in the process of that big sailing venture, they brought back samples and animals and stuff. But what happened, the next emperor of China decided that he wanted to not be out. He wanted
isolationist.
He wanted to be an isolationist, and he destroyed this fleet. But the Chinese have always had this tension about wanting to get out there and get bigger and become the empire. And we have to remember, like Persia, that they had a large empire before anybody touched down in North America.
Well, just remember, one of the reasons they are where they are right now is because they embraced capitalism finally.
Yeah.
Because when the communists first took over, and then for the next 20 years or more, actually, it was pretty dark. All right. But the Chinese have always been merchants, as you just indicated. They've always had that capitalism in their blood, and that's really for a very short time when the communists were they first took over and they tried that. So they're back to where they used to be. I think that's what you're indicating.
Yeah.
Anybody else comments along these lines? Yes, Larry.
I guess one of the questions I think Tim, you asked was, I mean, would it be feasible for the United States to look for opportunities to partner with China in Latin America? It might be, but I think it would be more in terms of U.S. business interests than in a feeling for the betterment of a particular country in Latin America. It would be more of that type of a thing. I don't know that we would have that as a strong foreign policy method here, but I don't think China would necessarily want to partner with us in places like Africa and Latin America, because this China, I think, really thrives on this influence that it has gained in these particular countries. It's a source of national pride, and China is willing to throw out a lot more dollars in development dollars in terms, like in this article, it talked about building a train from the Panama up into Costa Rica, I believe. The United States, that would almost be unheard of, for us to put in a multi-billion-dollar project like that. So I kind of think we're going to go back to maybe more of the normality of the Obama administration, and our biggest worries are not Latin America, because we got bigger fish to fry with other conflicts in the world, and with China on its own expansionist areas in the South China Sea and so on.
Okay. The enthusiasm for democracy in Latin America has been waning for quite some time. How does that affect you know, they're pretty close neighbors, relatively speaking, from a geographic standpoint. What do you think that's all? I mean, look at you know, Venezuela and so on, things like that. So, where do you think that's going?
Wait.
Tony, anybody? What do you think?
Well, I think Venezuela has shown that communism doesn't work because of the violence they have and the fact that a lot of the Cubans and who tasted Castro and the other Latins have voted for Trump because they didn't want, you know, us. They didn't want a leftist government. So I think that's going to be their thought. They don't want to have a leftist government because of all the problems they have.
Okay, well, when you talk about democracy being on the wane, it could be either left or right.
Right.
In effect. Any other, Julie, what do you think?
Well, I traveled yesterday, so I did not read the book, and we haven't seen the video, so I apologize that I'm kind of out of the loop. But
okay, let me say, there's this country, this big country, China, and then there's these little countries.
I Googled Monroe Doctrine 2021 just to see what would come up. And the statement that was printed from January was a statement by somebody that said that the Monroe Doctrine is undermining democracy in Latin America. I just thought it was an interesting sentence. Fortunately, it wasn't a whole article. It was just a snippet of something that somebody said. But what if the Monroe Doctrine is one of the things that's causing this problem?
Well, does that go back to the paternalistic attitude we've had with
I don't
Latin
know.
America?
I thought that
was
interesting.
Basically, I can't believe they haven't been fed up even sooner than this.
Right.
And
they've got so much violence. There's so much violence in some of those countries. It's crazy.
You know, the murder rate in Brazil is the highest. It's the same as the rest of the world. You know that?
Wow.
The number of murders every year.
What's the number in the United States comparatively?
I don't know. It's not anywhere near Brazil, but Brazil has they have more murders. I saw statistics recently, more murders than the vast majority of all the countries in the world.
Wow.
Actual numbers.
Wow.
So yeah, it could be a violent place. So, but I think that's a good point you make about are we suffering the effects of a Monroe Doctrine and how we treated South America all these years? Maybe is it coming home to roost, so to speak? What do you think, Larry Mortzoff?
Well, perhaps we are, but I think the at the time the Monroe Doctrine was issued, it was basically a defensive mechanism for the United States because we were militarily weak and we didn't want the British, the French, whoever with strong empires to settle around there again and attack us again. Didn't totally work out. War of 1812. And I don't know if that Monroe was in, that was pretty close to the Monroe Doctrine, maybe a little short in that time frame.
Right.
So I think we have kind of took it beyond what it really was, a defensive mechanism, stay away so we don't get in another fight. And then we kind of turned it, as we got stronger, we turned it more into an economic imperialism type of a statement.
Yeah, and that's what Teddy Roosevelt reinforced it with the Roosevelt corollary too.
Right.
Exactly what happened at the turn of the century.
I think
Jason?
The statement of the Monroe Doctrine is just a statement. It's just a policy paper that says we view this particular large area as being under the, I don't know, what word did they use? The power of, the hegemony of, the umbrella of something of the United States. And basically they were just saying in advance, if you mess with us within this area, we feel the privilege and the right to attack you. I mean, that's what I understood it as. A statement.
Well, it is. I mean, Monroe Doctrine is a doctrine. It's a statement.
Right?
It's basically a strategic plan. This is what we're going to do. And I think Larry had mentioned a good point. It was, we weren't very strong at that time.
But what
so that was a way to to control those European powers. Yes.
Well, to threaten them.
Yes. Let me ask. Yeah, go ahead.
The follow-up question is, how often did we actually go to war because somebody broached our sphere of influence in Monroe Doctrine? What have we really done in the last 200 years?
In South America. In South America, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, it's been a long time ago that I went to Peru, and there was so much violence, and people didn't have jobs, and they didn't have anything to do, and so they started all these farms where they make all this asparagus that is shipped to the United States now. So we get asparagus 12 months out of the year, and it's huge, and nobody in Peru likes asparagus, but they employ.
I don't like it either.
But they employ.
Keep it down there.
It's a huge farming industry to raise crops for the United States, and it's a different way of building partnerships compared to military or whatever. I wrote down that I want to ask, if we're going to build new doctrines for 2021 or this century, and you just said that China, their strength is being a merchant, and they're still playing that card. They are still trying to build the highways and be the merchants for the world. What is United States' strength? And as we write these new doctrines, how are we going to play that card so that we play to our strengths and become a strong partner?
That's a good question. Let me read you here's a quick quote from an article from a Jennifer Piscopo. She was from Occidental College, and she wrote it for The Conversation. Anybody familiar with The Conversation?
Yes.
Which is okay, you're probably familiar, Larry. Okay. She says, Biden has promised to fight like hell to defend America's global standing against China's growing power, using more collaborative rhetoric than Trump. But the new president has not yet signaled a new grand strategy that will ensure consistency, let alone the primacy of American interest. So it sounds like the administration, one of the plans is they're trying to get back to, should I use that word, normalcy, trying to get back to where we were before 4 years ago, trying to get the footing, but it's more collaborative, kind of where we were before, I guess. But so that's kind of where we're going here. So there's a lot of different aspects of this. It's not a simple approach, obviously. So how collaborative is it? What does collaboration mean? For example, is it stopping the trade wars? Is it all those various things? So
well, here's an idea relates to trade wars a little bit. Maybe I think the U.S. lead is in technology, in new development, even though China and other countries have a lot of talent, et cetera. But when it comes to innovation, maybe that's our lead. Our weakness is manufacturing at an affordable level. That's why so much of what we use comes from China, where the labor is cheap and the markets are such. I heard Tom Friedman once say Egypt should have been the Taiwan of the Mediterranean if they'd just done things to have more labor to support the new technology development and markets to sell those things. So to the extent that we would or could actually move production from China to South America and rely on South America, we'd be exposing ourselves to some stuff. That would be one step if we could encourage that, creating jobs other than growing asparagus. Create jobs that they would love to have. And it would cause, it'd be a long-term plan to, I'm a globalist. Okay, so I think that way, and I understand why people would rather not, but it seems to me that would be a good step. Much as we've done with the NAFTA, relying upon Mexico, why not the whole of Central America and South America being a place where we take the risk of relying upon their manufacturing support and improve their economies along. And we love to have cheap labor, but we are harvesting that, even as I say that, but I'll admit to that. So that's one thought.
Okay. Let's we got just a couple of minutes. Let's just go around and do a quick wrap up with what are your final thoughts or whatever on this topic. I'm looking at my screen. I'm going to start with Tony. Tony, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, well, we've got to do something. Otherwise, China will have their foot in every country near us, around us. So, and it's very dangerous because you don't know what their eventual strategy is. Maybe to take over this country. Who knows? That's my thought.
Wow.
Okay. Larry Mortzoff.
Wow.
I think we have just got to gradually move back to kind of where we were under the Obama administration, and because that was kind of the American idea in many people's minds of we were trying to establish a leadership role in the world where we can, but recognizing that had diminished from where it was in the 1990s. We just because of the relative rise in power of China.
Okay, Julie, what do you think? Your final thoughts?
Biden's only been in office for 16 days, and I think that he's got a tremendous amount of work in front of him, and I would rather than say, let's go back to doing it the way Obama did, because there are a lot of people, 50% of the population in the United States doesn't think that the way Obama did it was right. I think that together, Republicans and Democrats need to come to the table and do the SWOT, where we talk about America's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and create a dozen or more new doctrines or partnerships or collaborations with countries, with whoever could be our potential partners, and create new doctrines for this 21st century, and replace the Monroe Doctrine and whatever else needs to be replaced. But I think we need to start from scratch and get Congress involved and give them their job back, and give the diplomats their job back, and build these new doctrines, partnerships, collaboration.
Good ideas. Okay. Nancy, what do you think?
I agree with a lot of what Julie just said. I hope there's some serious study going on in the government and at all these different policy institutes, Republican and Democrat, or right and left leaning, that are trying to figure out what approach we should take toward China. I mean, I hope it's being seriously considered, because I think they're out to get us, period.
It's kind of like Tony, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Ken and Kathy, what do you guys think? Final thoughts.
Just simply put, I'm hoping that the new administration can find some common ground with China that's mutually, of course, beneficial for both countries, and go from a positive stance from there.
Okay. Ken, what do you think?
I think we need to stop thinking in comparative mode and stop this delusion that we are the greatest country on earth. We're not the greatest country on earth. Maybe in a few areas we might be, but we're simply not that great.
Too much hubris.
We need other countries for things like asparagus And
I can do without asparagus.
I love asparagus. I'm going to take that one to the grave.
You could have my share then.
I do. We have it every week.
Actually, it's not too bad, really. Go ahead. Sorry.
But I don't know if it's not based at all on the reading or the discussion, except for there's this comparative issue that we all have about our country. And we don't, by saying we're the greatest, that doesn't let us face our weaknesses, and our greatest weakness is ourselves. And that's been laid bare certainly within the last 4 years, and certainly within the last freaking 2 weeks. It seems like you learn more.
Right.
That scares me about living in my own country.
Okay, good point.
And
is it mine or hers? Or...
So I think we need to start asking other countries, what can we do for you? And hopefully they'll ask us the same question.
Okay. Jason, very quickly, final thoughts.
I don't think we need to make big policy statements. I think we need to make soft approaches through our diplomatic corps to all of the countries in the world that have any significance to us. And I mean, with no fanfare and no press, fly out there, greet them, hold your hat in your hand, say we're open to listen to you. I think that's very important. Finally, I think you have to stop, say it nicely, wringing our hands about China. Wringing your hands about China is like wringing your hands about a super tanker that's approaching your rowboat. These guys have got 1,300,000,000 people. They need to take care of them. And the only way they can take care of them is economic growth. So the Chinese are importance in the government is to stay in government, to not have a revolution, to improve the life of their people. And of course, they're going to step on our toes sometimes, but we've been stepping on toes for 250 years. So I say, go softly with all diplomatic contacts without any fanfare, and know that China is there forever.
Okay. Well said, Jason. Thank you.
I like that.
Larry.
Thank you.
Larry Orcutt, final comments.
But just a couple of thoughts. Eisenhower once said, if you want to move a rope, don't try pushing it, try pulling it from one end, leading by example if need be. So the more we deal with this program by establishing enticements, leading with mutually beneficial trade, what have you, that's a good choice. Another thing is, it's always good to understand the adversary's mind. If it doesn't hurt at all once a year when Putin has his big 3-hour press conference to at least read the highlights to understand what he's thinking. My wife and I travel a lot. We once spent 2 weeks in China. And when that 2 weeks was over, I said, well, I really learned a lot. But then I thought, you know, I learned even more decades earlier when I read The Good Earth by Pearl Buck, which was actually under a good old government before communism, the capitalism, it was actually ingrained in the way that people live within the. So things have changed a lot. May not be that good a read, but sometimes I don't read much fiction. But I remember that as much as I remember the 2 weeks living or being in China. So I just suggest that if you have an interest. And maybe I should actually read Mike Pillsbury's 100-Year March so I know more what he did. So I think we have great opportunities. Don't need to fret, but we don't need to get the opportunities by leading.
Okay. All right. Well, we had Catherine joined us, but Catherine, we're already wrapping up. If you can unmute Catherine. You unmute. You can unmute her, Tony.
I'm trying.
Just go to participants. And we can't see your face, Catherine. Adjust your screen, please. Oh, that's much better.
Hi.
You see that? You can
It doesn't give me that option.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, it should. I don't know what
I don't know why.
that is.
There you go, Catherine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I pushed about. I've been stumbling around all morning looking for you.
Well, we had some problems, but you found us.
Suddenly, I just stumbled on you.
Well,
better late than never.
Well, we had this discussion on, of course. Did you read the article on China and Latin America?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments, just general comments about what you read?
No, because after that I read the one on the children and the slave trade and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I was not quite sure which one you were doing today.
Oh, okay. Well, what we're going to do next week is get my list here.
Yeah.
My comment on China is the Australians, I think foolishly, but don't know why, have given the port of Darwin over to the Chinese to manage.
This is our agenda.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Next week, Philippines.
Philippines. Okay.
All right.
All right. So read up on that. You have the booklet, and
yes.
Tony will send a link. I'd say the day before, Tony.
Okay.
Just look at it as being fresher that way, and then hopefully we won't have a problem. And in the meantime, if you want to try to figure out that video thing like we did last time, because they always have a video. If you have a video in Philippines, that would be good. If not, we could just plow right into the discussion if that's okay with everybody.
Well, let me see if I can get that video icon or whatever it is.
Okay, Tony, why don't you and I
stay on
after everybody? Well, everybody else, I guess we're done for today. We'll see you next Friday at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Tony, is the Philippines thing from the 2020 book?
Yes.
Yes, they all are.
Yeah. Okay. I have scheduled my on Friday at 9 o'clock at the VA, my second shot. So I'll be a little late, but I'm going to let Tim start the meeting. I'll give you the password and everything, Tim.
Yeah, give me all that information. Just send that to me if we can get in.
Yeah,
I think we can do it that way.
Okay, I'm gonna Tim and I are gonna try and get this video to work correctly.
Yeah. So everybody else, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Jason, Catherine, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Sign
off.
Hey, I did take this
I'll call you.
program. So if anybody wants a copy, let me know.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay.
How do I get out? I can't get out.
Just go down to the bottom of your screen where it says leave, Jason. Hit leave.
It's not here. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, hit the button leave.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
everybody leave except me and Tony.
Yeah. We're going to try and get this work. We had it working the other day.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to go.
Jason, did you find a button to leave?
I did. Can you hear me?
Hit it.
Yeah.
Yes, hit it.
I did hit it. Wait a minute. I'll try again.
You can actually get rid of him, Tony, if you go to participants.
Oh, you know what? I got it. I know what to do.
What?
It says share sound.
Yes.
Share sound.
Right.
No, not on the sharing screen.
This new phenomenon.
There you go. Now? You got it. That's why I'm trying to point out to you. Okay, so you know how to do it now? Write it down.
Okay.
Worries about creeping authoritarianism.
All right. Well, I guess we can leave.
If anybody wants to leave, they could. I could play it.
Competing for influence.
I've seen it a couple of times, so I'm good. I'm going to leave.
Jason, you want to watch it?
Great decisions.
I am listening to it right now, but I don't know how to get back to video. When I started to offload all the stuff we were doing, I ended up with
in association with Thomson Reuters. Funding for Great Decisions is provided by PricewaterhouseCoopers LLP and the Nelson B. Delavan Foundation.
Well,
you didn't see it?
Yeah, no, I can't see it.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you all. And,
all right, thank you. Righto.
Be well.
Right. Take care.
Stay safe. Oh, there you go. You guys are still there.